as and when Hearts win the league. Not my words, the words of Tony Bloom, who continues to raise the hopes of the Hearts support. The team's not doing a bad job of that either. Still unbeaten and at the top of the Scottish Premiership after 7 games played during this international break. We will discuss some of the players as we go through our usual end-of-month categories. We'll also discuss the latest with Derek McInnes after a little bit of news on that today. To discuss that and more, I'm joined by Joe Sked. How are you doing, Joe?
Yes, well, good week. Thank you. Sorry, I've got a dog wandering around the bottom of my feet and making noise, so that's why it took me. I was on mute, and it took me a while to get to come back off.
Right, sorry, I didn't wonder what was going on. I did notice that the one that a few weeks ago when you apologised for a dog snoring, I could hear it for, I don't know, maybe not all the podcasts, but certainly for like the first half of the podcast or something. But StreamYard must have something that cleans up the audio because it didn't come through on that at all. So if this one decides to try and interrupt us, hopefully that doesn't get picked up on it either. Anyway, I'm just rambling nonsense. I'm going to go through.
No, sorry, I've been distracted because she just peed on my putting mat, so which is far from ideal. So this is a great start to the video.
Brilliant. Well, it kind of saved me from rambling away there. Heart Standard is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one, S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Thanks to everybody who's got in touch. Please get your comments in. We are going to go through our usual categories, which are best player, biggest surprise, unsung hero, and room for improvement. So please get your comments in on that and anything else you'd like to ask, and we will get to as many as we can. Please give us a wee subscribe if you haven't already, and if you like what we do, head over to heartstandard.co.uk, and we also have an app if you like to consume your content like that. Joe, let's start with the news, the headlines. We put a news story out today that Derek McInnes, amid Rangers' ongoing search for a new manager, Derek McInnes' name has been linked, which is maybe like caused a little bit of worry among some of the Heart supporters, and there was some news today that sort of quelled that. Not that there's been any official approach from Rangers, but more that Hearts are comfortable with the situation should that change.
Yeah, it's something I don't think we need to spend too much on, just because you look at the situation as is. There's been no approach from Rangers, so it's all kind of just conjecture at the moment. That's might not even get. It might get to the point where Rangers don't approach Derek McInnes, and it's all just been kind of talk for nothing. But I can understand the concern just because of how well Hearts have done under Derek McInnes. His kind of previous with Rangers, the fact that he is a former player, won a league title and won a Scottish Cup there, and then you look at what's happened at Rangers with Russell Martin, and you could probably you can make similarities to what happened with like Neil Critchley, whereas wasn't as nearly as bad as what happened with Russell Martin, but the direction the club took after removing that manager, whereas like Hearts went for someone who knows Scottish football experience, and you do wonder with Rangers they'll go for someone who is more of a sure thing, understands the club. It's about winning. It looks like they're going for Steven Gerrard, but I can completely understand why Derek McInnes has. There's been speculation around him, but yeah, it's all that needs to be said is that there's been no approach. The club are in a comfortable position. I think the club have been aware of the Rangers situation, and they've been monitoring the Rangers situation, aware of the fact that if Martin was to leave, that McInnes' name would be mentioned. Whether there's anything concrete in that or not, it was always going to be the case that McInnes was going to be seen as a potential candidate to replace Russell Martin. I think, and naturally, like there has been kind of conversations with all parties, and as far as I'm aware, as far as Heart Standard is aware, that there's a comfort that everyone's comfortable with the situation, that there is a belief that Derek McInnes will, if Rangers' interest was to emerge, would remain at Hearts, because of it's just a start of a really exciting journey, a new era. And why would you leave that when there's something brewing and something building?
Yeah, you can see why his name's sort of being put out there. The past, like you've said, the past connections with the club, the way he's kind of started, he was linked with the job before. And it's funny, I was speaking to somebody earlier today, and I made that same parallel, not about Critchley and Martin, but about the situation that Hearts were in the summer and the situation that Rangers find themselves in now. But we still don't know if Rangers are going to go down the same route as they did with Martin, but somebody could do it better, or revert to somebody who knows the league, or whatever way you want to put it. But I suppose that news today, if anything, it's just for Hearts fans. It's just a bit of sort of reassurance for Hearts fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, and I've seen the comments of this kind of story put out yesterday, and then people replying was like, it'd be good for Derek McInnes to come out and kind of like just reaffirm
kill the story.
Kill it. But then it would be a strange thing for Derek McInnes to come out of the blue and just talk to do that when there's not been any approach, and it's just like not interested in Rangers, but then Rangers turn around, it's like, we're not interested in you. So it would just get messy, and it would just be natural for him to do that if there was a press conference where he'd naturally be asked. And I think that's something the club and McInnes wouldn't want to do, is take that step forward. So but I can understand the fans' unease, and I think there has been a wee bit more reassurance with the news today.
Darren, Thelwell is the problem at Rangers, in my opinion. Hopefully he'll make a mess of the new manager appointment and hand Hearts at least second on a plate. I hope they're not looking for another new manager by the end of the season, though, because that would just mean that if Derek McInnes is still doing well, then his name would come up again. So hopefully he doesn't mess it up that much, for my own sanity, if nothing else. Marty01 says, it's not happening. It would be really silly for McInnes right now. Opportunity for success at Hearts is huge. Chance of failure at Rangers is even bigger. I mean, I totally agree with all that, but I don't want, just don't want any of that tested. I'd rather just not be in that scenario. And Donny Brown says, Dell knows which side his bread is buttered and which team is on the upward trajectory. And I suppose that's a good point. Just before we move on, to finish on that, chucking in cheekily, that if Hearts are to fulfill their ambitions, then it will be to surpass Rangers at some point. So Hearts is the place to be.
Yeah, and again, you look at the comments from Tony Bloom in August when he talked about he could see this season Hearts splitting those farmers being a potential, and then even then you're thinking it's probably a wee bit too soon.
And now everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it. Genius.
Yeah, exactly. What a visionary. Right, we'll move on to our usual end of month categories. We chats about best player and so on, and that's exactly the one that we will start with. Best player. The first guy I think we should chuck out is what I mean to say, is the man who this week won the Scottish Premiership Player of the Month award, and that is Lawrence Shankland. First of all, we'll discuss Lawrence Shankland, and then we will discuss if there's anybody beyond Lawrence Shankland that's worth getting best player for September.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the awards I might. If there was a disappointment award, it'd probably be the fact that there was only two games in September, and kind of owing to Hearts not playing in the League Cup, so it's only on two. You're kind of only basing this on 2 games, but yeah.
And then there's the confusion of the Hibs game coming after it, but like, do you know what I mean? We're discounting what's happened in the Hibs game as well. There's an extra confusion there.
Exactly, and I think on Lawrence Shankland is he came into the month. I think there's certainly had discussions around his role in the team, and people were talking about, should it be Braga and Kabori up front, or Braga or Wilson, or where's Shankland? The club's fought to keep Shankland, and he's not really been performing. Yet he hits back with 2 really good goals in the games and the 2 wins. He scored against? Am I making stuff up? Did he score against Rangers? I'm sure he did score against Rangers.
Twice against Rangers. He scored the 2 goals against Rangers, and he scored against.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, it's been a very long day. And yeah, so he hits back, scores a double against Rangers, and then scores the excellent goal against Falkirk. And there's just like, can he just quiet him down? It's like, what's to worry about? This is the guy who's going to, when he's in the team, he's going to score goals for Hearts, no matter what. And then it's on top of that, it's everything else he brings to the team with his leadership, his intelligence, the way he builds up links play, etc., etc.
Yeah, he has really sort of, after the sort of dust has settled on the excitement around the new signings, he's sort of come through and shown his worth to the team. And I'd say like one of the most, was it the most important fixture of the season so far? I mean, I know we're in a really early stage, but that win at Ibrox was just, it was something. I mean, we did it to death. It's something the club, we did it to death every time they had been there since I joined. But it'd been a while since Hearts had won there. It felt like the first big test of the season. It was the first time they were playing Rangers or Celtic. Okay, they played away at Aberdeen and hosted the Scottish Cup winners. But the discussion around them, that it was good times to get those teams. This felt like the first proper test, and it was the first. Was it the first comfortable win of the since the league started as well, or the most comfortable win until the Falkirk game anyway? And after the game, McInnes was talking about a masterclass from Shankland in leading the line, and that first goal, the second goal, is he's lucky to get the chance to put in the rebound, but the first goal,
that's what I forgot about.
It's just an unbelievable finish. It's just a really, when we were sitting there watching it live, I did not think he was putting it in from there. I was like pleasantly surprised to see it. And and when you see the replays, that one that's kind of through the net, he doesn't have much of a target to get that into as well. It's an absolutely superb finish.
That's the finish. So both goals, like, so the 2 of his 3 goals, so keep don't want to discount it, but forgetting the missed penalty and the rebound, but both goals, Falkirk as well, is like the excellent finish like you talked about against Rangers. The type of goals that weren't going in last season, but were going in when he scored 30 plus the previous season. I think that's been a big difference. I don't know if it's just one of these things, or it just comes down to confidence and the environment he's playing in. And it's so I think and it's the fact that he's one player of the month, but I think he's done what he's done quite. He's kind of joint top goal scorer in a like stealthy manner, because there's been so much talk about other Hearts players.
Yes. Emperor Craig says, if the Falkirk game is anything to go by, we should be refusing to pass to him or putting the ball behind him for 10 minutes every week to get him riled up. It's not a bad point. He definitely scored that goal through blinkered anger. And then another move on from Shankland, another nominee, Craig Halkett. This is the one that's maybe difficult because he was so good in the derby. It's like but I think
Gary's... So I think Gary's point is probably more in keeping with the season as being phenomenal this season, rather than just simply in the month of September.
I'm going to throw him forward as a candidate anyway, because he's been consistently very, very good, and he
was excellent against Rangers.
Yes, and he's just been brilliant. There's an argument. That's what I was going to say. There's an argument that he's been the best player so far this season. He's among a group of players that you could say has been arguably Hearts' best player this season. And that includes the 2 games. In September, there was 2 clean sheets, the first consecutive clean sheets of the season since the league kicked off. So I think Craig Halkett, even discounting his Derby heroics is a good shout for at least being a nominee for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of leads on to, I suppose, bringing it here before we move on to the next category or so talk about different players. Liam Charles says, also, know you guys might have spoke about it after the Derby. We didn't. But Halkett for Scotland, or would you rather our place stayed away to not risk injury? No, I think, especially like with Halkett, I think it's just really nice to get that recognition. And he is... It's difficult to break into this or get back into the Scotland squad as it is, just because of the way that Steve Clarke, rightly or wrongly, operates his squad. But all he can do is continue, and the same with Shankland. All he can do is continue to deliver weekly for Hearts, especially at the top of the table. They've become hard to ignore and hard for Steve Clarke to rule out. Listen to Halkett when he was doing the Monday show with Darryl Curry and Michael Stewart and Alan Hutton. He didn't back away from his Scotland ambition either. He's like, that's something I want, and it's like kind of penny dropped over the summer with, and going back to when we talked about it a lot, penny dropped with the need to really get into the best shape possible, and it was a really, really big year for him. And he is maybe could have done it earlier in his career, but he's really reaping the rewards of it now.
I do wonder if there's a scenario later on in the season where Hearts, if a very big if, Hearts maintain something close to this kind of form and like sort of camaraderie around the squad and stuff, I do wonder whether it will make Clarke more likely to, because there are like a few different candidates in there. It's sometimes good to have sort of relationships from club level then come into international level. There have been some instances of international teams being successful in the past through harnessing relationships that have been built up at club level. And I say, especially if Hearts are in anywhere near this kind of form going into future international windows, because I mean, if Halkett was to continue the way he started this season, I mean, that it's going to be quite difficult for Steve Clarke to ignore. Should a place open up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Steve Clarke is a massive fan of Grant Hanley, and I thought Grant Hanley was excellent against Hearts on Saturday. But if you compare them, like, I think Halkett's a wee bit younger, and then you compare their performances. Halkett was just that little bit better. I know it's a one-game thing, and there's again going back to the way Steve Clarke chooses his squad, but I think there's it's probably there's a wee bit more room now than previous seasons previous years when you had like Tierney McKenna, Liam Cooper, Grant Hanley, John Souttar, Jack Henry, and potentially missing someone out as well. So I think there is the scope to know that it's realistic. If Halkett continues it, you'll get into the Scotland squad. And Rob Gambolo says Halkett's just got Team of the Week on FIFA, which is rare with the amount of recognition they tend to give the Scottish League. So there you go. He's in the FIFA Team of the Year. Get him in.
There you go. Big club found. Let's move on to biggest surprise, Joe. Have you got any ideas for this?
Is this the biggest surprise?
Yes, did I cut out there? You froze for a second.
Yeah, apologies. It's probably my internet. It's not been top drawer today. But the biggest surprise, you go at the Rangers game, Harry Milne, right wing. I don't think any of us saw that coming. Remember when the team lines dropped at Ibrox, and it was a case of trying to break it down, and people were quite rightly questioned us for putting Harry Milne on the right, and it was just it was three bits of guesswork, and they all for once came they all came true. And then he played well. It was the fact that Derek McInnes explained why they went for Harry Milne at right wing, but it's because you look at, if you were to name 10 of that 11, and it all made sense, and then Harry Milne was just it was just like the curveball amongst it all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because he was so good in that game. And we thought it was just going to be for that Rangers game, but it worked so well that McInnes kept the same team for the next game, and he played well in the next game as well. There was a bit more of an onus on him to attack, and it maybe wasn't quite as good a performance as it was at Ibrox, but I mean, it was related to something we were talking about a minute ago when Shanklin riled up Shanklin. That it was his. I think it was an accumulation of things, but the straw that broke the camel's back and made him have an outburst about it, I think, was the final action by Milne. So he wasn't quite as good as he was at Ibrox, but it was still like a really good performance. And then retained it again for the derby. I don't know if we'll see it again for the next game, but there'll be an international break as well. I think there probably will be something else that McInnes has worked on, but it's hard to see past him for this. I was going to suggest, and then I saw it in the comments, so I will give them the credit. Gavaldo says Shvolov. Now, I was thinking about this. Now, not so much that I thought it was going to be rubbish and he's come in and he's been great, just an unknown to being competent, I think we could say so far. I mean, we can't really say he's brilliant because he's not really been tested yet to know if he's brilliant. But yeah, I think I've been pleasantly surprised by how good he's been. And I think the talk about the clean sheets, a lot of it's down to the team as a whole. And I know he's not had a lot of saves to make, but I still think that he deserves credit for coming in and fitting in seamlessly and just calmly fitting in. I'm not saying that Clark wouldn't have been part of the same team and got clean sheets, but the fact that he's come in from another country, completely new to all these players, and it's gone off without a hitch. I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's an easy situation to come into. Consider, I mean, he's got loads of experience, but the fact that he's coming in where you've got Xander Clark, who, again, a really popular member of the squad, Craig Gordon, a Hearts legend, and then to come in and kind of settle so well and bring a calmness. I think not only has he brought a calmness to the defence, I think he's brought a calmness to the Hearts crowd. I think there's been, for the last 2.5 seasons, there's been a debate about who is Hearts number one, who's the best Hearts goalkeeper. Whereas with Schwallow coming in, it's just eradicated that. It's just taken away that discussion and that focus, and everyone's just kind of just understanding. Yep, he's played loads of games in the Bundesliga. He's come in, not had much to do, but he's had 2 clean sheets, which is great.
Liam Charles says, I'd maybe say McInnes. Don't know if it's from September or since the start of the season, but it's been a great surprise for just how consistent he does his job quietly. I think that's a good shout as well because, again, I couldn't tell you exact games. He was absolutely fantastic in that first half at Ibrox. The second half, he played on with an injury, and I think that explains maybe why he wasn't as good second half and then why he was replaced. But I think for all the talk at the start of the season and all the worry about Borchgrevink's injury, it's not a conversation anymore. Yeah,
absolutely. I think he's done a really solid job, and I think it's a great shout from Liam Charles that he has probably gone. I would actually, there's another award that we could give, and Unsung Hero. I think he's worthy of that because of the role he has played, and there's not been as much of a clamour for Christian Borchgrevink. Even when Borchgrevink he's got back to fitness, he's obviously had an illness, that it's not really a discussion point, and I understand that it's helped by the fact that Hearts are winning. So if Hearts hadn't got if Hearts weren't winning games, then people would be talking about it no matter how McInnes was playing. But the fact that they've been winning games, McInnes has been part of that solid defence, which has now kept 3 clean sheets in a row if you consider the Hibs game. And you made a really interesting point on Saturday where it's almost like McInnes he's like a 60 to 75 minute fullback. And then you bring Steinwender on maybe when he tires, and then he just adds a bit. Steinwender adds a bit more mobility, and it's an interesting dynamic. But considering he's brought into play midfield, even though he's had played right back in the past, I think he's, after a wee couple of difficult moments, I think he's really helped.
We'll just say we'll move on to Unsung Hero now and just say that the biggest surprise is Harry Milne. And more for doing well on the right wing than like us being surprised in his ability. How about going over to the other side from McEntee and the position vacated by Harry Milne for another candidate for Unsung Hero, and that's Stephen Kingsley. He spoke the other week about he feels like he has a good season at Hearts and a bad season at Hearts and a good season and a bad season. And I think sometimes that's through injury and sometimes that's through form and whatever. And again, going back to 12 months ago, he was having a tough time of it. I think him coming out the team and James Penrice starting regularly might have coincided with Hearts going on a bit of a better run, and then he got injured and he wasn't in the team again until the semi-final, I believe. They come at right back in the semi-final. So much happens. There's just so much turnover
it's
of information. It's difficult to keep up with it all. But he's come in. First 2 appearances of the season since the League Cup. Again, just fitted in seamlessly. Has been really, really good. And going back to the 2 clean sheets over September, part of the defence that stopped conceding sloppy goals that they had been conceding the month before that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've not really. I say this on a really, really. I say this on a really good. From a really good point of view, is that you've not really noticed the shift. The fact that you've moved Harry Milne, who was excellent at left back, to then you don't really notice Harry Milne not being there. And I go back to when was it? In Spain, I think it was, and it was just after Penrice left, and it was like, right, our Heart's going to sign a left back, and people were just speculating. It's like, they need to sign a left back because if like Harry Milne got injured or someone got injured, you're light at left back. Derek McInnes was really comfortable with the situation. Harry Milne was signed in January with a view to potentially replacing James Penrice. He was rated very, very highly by Jamestown. Of course, everyone's rated well by Jamestown, but Harry Milne, like in terms of what he was bringing in, was especially so. And then on the flip side, you had a guy like Stephen Kingsley, who, admittedly, I thought he was more of a left-sided, like moving forward in his career, a left-sided centre back, especially in a back 3. But he has wealth of experience, and you have him as backup at left back or as a centre back, and you think it's a really good balance here between Milne, who is just finding his way at Premiership level, and Kingsley, who's been there and done it at Premiership level, and it's worked out really, really well. There's not been an issue with left back, and that's been really positive. Now, and it's just really the last few weeks have really reaffirmed that with the way that Stephen Kingsley's played, and you've not the way that Harry Milne has not made you think about James Penrice. Kingsley's not really made you think about Harry Milne playing at left back. So yeah, it's really positive.
Who should we go with then? Stephen Kingsley or Ocean McEntee for the Unsung Hero?
Oh, I was just going to bring B. Dougal suggested. They've all been great, but Stuart Finlay has also been great, quietly going about his business.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's a case of being overshadowed by Craig Halkett and his renaissance.
Yeah, I think so. Probably just because he isn't scoring goals now that people aren't talking about him as much. But yeah, other than, the Livingston goal, can't really think of him putting much of a foot wrong at all across the season. So yeah, you could throw up any of the defenders other than Craig Halkett. Really, since Craig Halkett's taken all the headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think in terms of the unsung hero, it's really difficult between McEntee and Kingsley. I think those are the two big candidates. I think honestly, I'm going to sit on the fence and just flip a coin.
Okay, I'll go with Stephen Kingsley, and that clinches it. It's Stephen Kingsley.
And did someone suggest that? Or did you put that forward?
That was my one. That was my
suggestion. Yeah. Well, yes, you take that. You take that.
Room for improvement. Joe. Now we've got somebody who they've said it's not really the category we've asked for. Gavaldo is his biggest disappointment. He says it's got to be Khartoum. I haven't really considered him for any of these. I think it's kind of unfair on somebody like Khartoum because he's not really involved. So we'll kick the guy when he's down. But we'll just take it as a given that people that are not playing at the moment have room for improvement. But is there anybody you have in mind for this category, Joe?
I'm trying to think if there is anyone that. It's really difficult to answer that with the. It's really difficult to answer that with on the back of those three results.
Yeah, well, it's actually only the two, but you're right.
Yeah,
it's like been the same team for the three of them. So, well, I mean, if you're being really nitpicky, you could say Schwallow, the first goalkeeper since the 50s to get 3 clean sheets in a row, but he's had a couple of dodgy. I suppose you could look at any player and pick a few mistakes that they've made. That's really unfair. But yeah, so we're just going to scrap this one for this month because how can you improve on a win at Ibrox and a clean sheet, a comfortable win at home, Falkirk, clean sheet, no real worries in the game.
Is this worth? I'm sorry, I'm just cut across you, but Brian Ferry has put something up. And do you think this is worthy of room for improvement in terms of trying to get Cammy Devlin a new deal quick?
Yeah, okay, let's change it to off the field matters. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, it does seem like there's something is in the pipeline. There hasn't been any word about interest. I'm sure some clubs would be monitoring Cammy Devlin. There doesn't seem to be any desire from many parties to part ways. He has thrived even more since Derek McInnes came in. Derek McInnes spoke earlier in the season about simplifying his game. And whatever he said to him, whatever he's instructed him to do, just keep doing that, mate, because he's been brilliant. I don't know, probably should have been in the discussion again for the player of the month because he's just like Halkett. He's one of these players that's just been brilliant across the season so far and is in the conversation for being Hearts' best player so far this season. So yeah, the sooner they get that done, the better. But it does seem like something that is, I would wager, is going to happen.
It's interesting. Just on the back of his comments to, I think it was ESPN Australia over the last 24 hours, because he is on international duty with Australia, and he's obviously been asked about his contract situation, and what he said was quite similar to what he said to us a couple of months ago when he talked about his happiness for his time and happiness of being in Edinburgh playing with Hearts, how much he enjoys the club. He's been here for a number of years, and that he'd be happy to extend. I would also say that because he's been here for so long, I think it would be only natural for him to look at other not proactively look to move on from Hearts at the end of his contract, but understand that there could be something else out there for him because, and that's the thing about the final 6 months of the contract. It allows you to kind of look to see what's out there, and it's not in a way that he would settle for Hearts, just out of curiosity. And he's at a place where he's rated highly, he's really liked by fans, and he's got strong, and he's a proven Scottish Premiership player. So yeah, I'd be hopeful that maybe something happens between now and the end of the season. But I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen immediately, just because he might want to see what's out there for him.
Fair enough. He gets it, Joel. He gets it. Cameron Clunny asks, if Hearts winning the league meant Hibs win the Scottish Cup, would you take it? I mean, all day long. Yes. I'm not sure Hibs fans would take it, though. Ian Muir says a couple of quality signings in the next window just to reinforce the squad. I wouldn't disagree, but as Matty K says, apparently, or related to what Matty K says, apparently Chesnikov has only 2 matches left at Tobol. He's supposed to come to Edinburgh November, December to get ready for January. So yes, we have. And then something else Matty K said.
Just on Chesnikov. So the plan is that he finishes his league season, I think, later on this month. I think he will essentially get November off, and then the plan is to bring him to Hearts around December, but he obviously can't be registered in January. So the plan is that when January comes, by January 1st, he is up and running, integrated with the squad and ready to contribute for the second half of the season. Yeah,
and they've checked that. Like Derek McInnes was asked at one of the press conferences I was at, and about whether there was any problem with him being around the club and training and that kind of stuff, and there's no issues with that because he will have already signed for and be a Hearts player. But yes, the other point that Matty K was making was Ajew is going to be fit for Killie. I suppose before we answer that, the overall point I was making, to go back to what Ian Muir was saying, is that there's already, even without adding more players in January, if that scenario comes to pass, there's already Ajew to be integrated into the first team 11, as well as a few others. And Chesnikov will be available to play from January. So there's already improvements there to be had, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that's the thing, is like people are, I think, be wanting the club to go out and kind of spend big in January. The priority is going to be bringing the size of the squad down. I think they'll monitor a couple of positions, but you have to consider that, like you said, Ajew, Chesnikov, and then guys who have maybe not had an impact yet, they will increasingly become more important as the season goes on and contribute. So there's a big thing that I do say, there's a lot more to come from this Hearts squad.
Finish up on Matty K show. Killie have sneaked under the radar a bit. We'll need to be at it from minute 1. We had a discussion along these lines on another podcast just the other day, didn't we, Joe? About Kilmarnock's impressive start to the season, and it's going to be a tasty one for 2 form teams and all the narrative that surrounds it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward. I kind of said it on the last 2 podcasts we've done, is that I just can't wait until Saturday. Sorry, a week on Saturday. I just kind of get the international break out of the way, because I think it's going to be such an interesting game. To go back to Mike Kay's previous question as well, I would be, I think Ajew's progressing, but I wouldn't expect, if he's fit, which I think he probably could be, don't expect him to start, because if we went back to after the Livingston game, I don't think there was any thought that he'd be ready to start like the next game after that. So the fact he's missed a wee bit more, I think if we can organise a bounce game next week, that'll be really important. But ideally, he'll be part of the squad and just have that inspiration coming off the bench with a view to taking on a bigger role going forward. Because again, it's spent all this money. There's no need to rush him, especially when the team are doing so well. But yeah, Kilmarnock will be a really tough test. I think they've been the surprise package of the season with Stuart Kettlewell. They've signed really, really well. They've integrated a couple of the young boys. David Watson's been fantastic. And then they've got a wee bit of a shape about them as well. We expect Ajew to be back for that game. The Hibs game came a wee bit too soon for him, and they knew because there was an international break afterwards that there was no point in trying to rush him in any way. But we will get a proper update on that next week. Any other business, Joe? As you slowly lose control of that dog?
No, I think someone asked there, would it be a disappointing season if Hearts don't win the league? No. Like, I don't think that wasn't the expectation coming in. Expectation coming in was to get to return to Europe, ideally finish third. But I think now the more realistic goal is try and finish in second. I think that's the more realistic goal at the moment. And then as the season progresses, who knows what could happen.
It'll be disappointing if Hearts don't win the league in the next 10 years. Not my words, the words of Tony Bloom. And that brings us full circle. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and everybody for getting involved and giving us your comments. Sorry we didn't get to them all. There were just too many. Get over to heartstandard.co.uk and check out what we do. If you liked this video, please give us a subscribe, and we'll be back at some point later in the week.
I wasn't